Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live, and it is my special honor to welcome our very special guest, all the way from England, Ross McCall. Ross, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. I was just fascinated by your intro there. I mean, that's like it's like its own little movie.
I know, and I gotta say, I have a great team behind me. I really do. I have a great team behind me that helps me put this together.
Where
Uh,
are they? Hiding behind your chair. I don't see them. Yeah, straight in with the gags, man. Straight in with it.
And living in the age that we're living in, I can assemble a team, and we do. We have a team from around the world, and that's awesome. Getting different perspectives from people all around the world. It's been truly a blessing to have all these people just helping out because they believe in what we do. I want to tell you a funny story. Now, yesterday, Sunday, uh, I was sitting on the couch. I was, watching some TV while I was working from my laptop. And I have seen you in a lot of stuff. I mean, the list is endless, right? So I'm
Mhm.
like, let me watch something of Ross. And you know what I settled on your single episode of Castle.
Wow.
Yeah,
All
I'm a
right.
huge Castle fan, right? And
I'm
there's
too.
and there's this little inside thing with me and my wife. My wife knows I have a crush on Stana Katic.
Hmm.
so, so what was your experience on that single episode in Castle?
It just shows you how, I guess, how small and how connected Hollywood is. So Castle, I remember I was out in my a park outside an apartment I was staying in, and I was walking my dog, and my manager called, and they said, "Hey, Castle have just come in with they're checking your availability." So for those of you who don't know what that is, as an actor, sometimes you get to a point where people very graciously offer you work, and you don't have to go read, and don't have to audition, whatever. And it's usually people who either you've worked with before or they know your work or whatever. Um, and so when they call and they say they're checking your availability as an actor, you go, this is great. And check it. If I'm available, then we do the job. We like the script. We go ahead. We make the character. But the truth is, when they're checking your availability, they're probably checking about 20 other people's availability. If the truth be known, so it's not as quite as exciting as you hope it is. But I do remember them calling, checking avail, and that's basically saying, are you working next week? And if you're not, would you come and do our show if you like the character? So I said, yeah, I'm available. And it turns out that the casting director of Castle, the wonderful casting director called Donna Rosenstein, and Donna had cast me many years ago in Ghost Whisperer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I knew her. And she always used to bring me in on stuff. So she was like a great pal. So I go in, and I was also a fan of the show. But Stana and I had met previously because we used to, it sounds so actory and so stupid. I'm way cooler than this. But we did decide to do a play reading in somebody's house at one point, which that sounds like I did it every weekend. I did it like twice in my life in LA. But once was with Keanu Reeves
Wow.
and once was with Stana. And so I got to know her a little bit there. So it was really lovely when I showed up in the makeup trailer. And you're walking into somebody else's home when you're guest starring. I've been a series regular on many shows, and your guest stars come in and they're only there for a week or whatnot. But yeah, they made me feel very welcome, and we had a lot of fun. Yeah, I love Castle.
I'll tell you what. There's this 6 degrees of separation in Hollywood. Stana, before she did Castle, appeared in 24. You appeared in 24 Live Another Day. I don't even know
Well,
if you
listen,
knew that or not.
I did know that, but again, let's not get carried away. Every actor in the world has been on 24. I mean, let's just call that what it is. It's like I'm sort of semi joking. That's not true. I was very honored to be a part of the show. But there's a show in the UK called The Bill, which no longer is on, but I think still runs on cable channel somewhere. But it's the show that every British actor has been in. Big movie stars now had done The Bill, and so that's my joke about 24 in America. But no, I was aware that Stana had done 24, and that was a show I had a lot of fun on. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm also a big 24 fan. For here in the United States, because it lasted 15 seasons, our version of that is Criminal Minds. I don't think I've interviewed one person who has not made at least a single appearance on Criminal Minds. There you go.
I'm your first, my man. I'm your first.
You are. Almost everybody's been on Criminal Minds. All right, so before we move on from Castle, I'm a native New Yorker, and I
Yeah,
got to tell you, you had that New York accent down pat.
that's great to hear. I take that to heart.
Do
So
you do,
thank you.
did you do a lot of voice coaching when you were starting out?
Not to completely bore you, and some of the folks listening to this have probably heard me say this in interviews before. No, so I for whatever reason I just sort of gravitated towards American movies when I was a kid, and I grew up in a city that had a very rural inner city vibe, which meant was there were some bad crowds that you could run around with,
Hmm.
and I certainly ran around with a dicey one when I was younger. And I've always said that the movies and and a pretty girl were the things that saved me, and it was true. If there was one of the young lassies came out, I was more interested in talking to her when I was a kid than I was going to cause trouble with my friends. But the other thing that I used to do was they had a local movie theater, and I've been, I was working when I was a kid, so I always had pocket change. I always had something on me. But even then, I was like, if I could watch a movie for free, I would. And so I'd figured out a way that I could climb up basically the drain pipes of this movie theater. And you'd hop across one wall to another, and you'd sort of shimmy up, and you'd get onto the roof of the cinema. And there was a shed on the roof of the cinema that was open because no lunatic is ever going to go up there, and nobody knew it was there until I went there. And inside were these boards that you could lay down on, and there were light bulbs in the floor, which were actually the twinkly lights in the ceiling of the movie theater.
Wow.
And so I would pull those lights out, and I would lay down, and I would watch the movie through the hole. And so that was my cinema paradiso, story. But that was my love for film at a really early age, and every piece of film I watched was American. Um, and I sort of gravitated towards the New York actors.
Hmm.
Uh, just that's who I was sort of, young De Niro and Pacino. It sounds so trite as for an actor to say that, but those guys in their heyday
Hmm.
were the top level.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, Goodfellas changed my life, but so did when I first started watching Taxi Driver, when I first watched Serpico or The Godfather, whatever it was. I was gravitating towards those actors, young Mickey Rourke. And so the accent sort of came very easily to me. And then I ended up doing a play here in the West End, which is like the Broadway of London. And it was a Neil Simon show called Lost in Yonkers. And I played the lead in that for like a year.
Wow.
So I just had this, thick New York accent for a year. And everybody who knew me thought I was crazy because I just sounded like I was from Yonkers.
Yeah, I did not know you're from Scotland, right? Originally?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, because all the stuff that I've seen you in, you could not tell. And I mean, there are some great there are a lot of great British actors, but when they
Yeah.
pull off that American accent, there's only a handful of them that are like, wow, when you hear them talk in their native accent for the first time, you're like, he is British or she is British, and you're one of them. You're definitely one of them. So let's move on now to one of the most successful shows that you have been on. Walk us through the journey of you booking the role on Band of Brothers.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah. So Band of Brothers it was one of those jobs that every actor of my generation went up for. So, there's, I meet people all the time and they say, yeah, I read for this role. And, there were movie stars at the time. And obviously there's been people that were in the show that had tiny roles who've since gone on to be, mammoths in cinema. And so, everybody in the UK, everybody in the US, I mean LA, New York, Chicago, everybody in Australia, actors had heard that Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks were coming to town. You know, Indiana Jones was probably my first foray into the movie theater. That I think Temple of Doom was like that, and E.T.
Yeah.
I definitely went to see as a kid. So I always had this hunch, and I don't know why. I always had a hunch I would work with Mr. Spielberg, and so when this came up, you know, all my beacons went off and went, "Ooh, this is close. This is close now. I can almost touch this." So I heard about it. I knew they were doing a big round of casting calls, and my agent was great at the time, and really, she was really careful and strategic in the fact that she didn't want to throw me in right at the beginning of all the rounds. She wanted to wait until they'd whittled it down to, you know, a smaller group. So I guess, you know, the competition is less, or you just have a better shot.
Very smart move.
Yeah, really smart and brave. Mm-hmm. You know, that could have gone horribly wrong. But so she told me about the show, told me about Stephen Ambrosi's book. So the first thing I did was go buy the book. And this was 20 years ago. So we all had cell phones, but there weren't, you know, computers in our hands. You would still go to the library. You know, I think everyone still had dial-up if you were lucky for internet. So I went down to my local library. I just researched the paratroopers. I knew a reasonable amount about World War II, but very much just educationally, you know. Mm-hmm. So I started digging a little deeper. I just was really connected to it and ready to go. I mean, I just knew it. And my first audition was everybody auditioned with pretty much like 2 or 3 scenes. And they were just random scenes that out of an episode they'd already written. So they weren't trying to, like, I wasn't reading for lead guy. You know, I got like, I don't even remember who it was, but it was sides. And so the first, I had to go in. I went to the Royal Athenaeum Hotel here in Piccadilly in London. Mm-hmm. I go in, and Meg Lieberman is she basically is one of the top folks at CBS now, and at the time was just this incredible casting director who had impeccable taste, and you know, she had a lot of history with her. So I had to go meet her at the hotel, where there were 20 other guys all doing the same thing. But you had to go in another room and meet Angela Terry, who was partnering with Meg. But you had to go through Angela first. If she gave you the thumbs up, she then told you to hang out, and then you had to go see Meg that same day. Yeah. And I remember going in to see Angela, and I walked in with my American accent, completely telling everybody who would listen or anybody who asked. I'm very quiet when I go meet for auditions. But anybody who asked, where are you from? I would say Yonkers. And I had this whole, you know, backstory, and, you know, well, why are you in England? I moved here like 4 years ago. I was, you know, so I was just
forget about it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, almost. I didn't go full on Goodfellas, but for sure I had the twang. But as soon as I walked into Angela's room, there was an actor who was reading with us. Sometimes casting directors will hire actors, good actors, to come in and read with other actors for auditions. Mm-hmm. I knew the guy, and he was American, but I knew he knew I wasn't American. So I was like, let's hope this guy doesn't blow my cover. And he gave me one look, and he winked, and I was like, he's a good guy. He's got it. He's got it covered. So I got through that round. I had to stick around, and I noticed more and more people were just sort of getting sent home. And by the end, it was just sort of me there. And I went in to see Meg, and Meg is very professional and very standoffish in a way. She's one of my dearest friends now, so I can say that. But I remember reading for her. She was on the other side of the room. I finished. She then stopped. There was this awkward silence for a long time. She then picked up the chair, came and put it right in front of me, sat in front of me, and said, do that again. And, you know, I did it again. And she told me that day, she said, okay, I want you to come back next week and meet Tom Hanks. He's going to be meeting a few of you guys. And, you know, it's very casual. Come in. We're going to send you a new scene and work on it. Great. So a week later, I had to go back to the same place. Tom was in the middle of his Castaway shoot, so he had the long beard and he had the headband, the bandana. Oh, yeah. And, you know, there was maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 people in the room. But at that point, you're just zoning in on movie star. I mean, you
Hmm.
don't see anybody else. You're just, you know,
That's
hey,
Tom Hanks.
it's Forrest Gump, man. You know,
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with Forrest for a second. So I went in. He could not have been sweeter and nicer. Put me at ease straight away. We shot The Breeze. I literally walked in with a folder full of notes that I knew, like meant nothing to anybody, but it was for me, just, you know, I just had all this paratrooper knowledge. And I just wanted to be prepared in case anybody said, hey, what do you know about the troopers? You know? So I finished that audition, and I'd heard like people had been through, you know, a round of 7 or 8 auditions. And this was my second. And then I got another phone call a few weeks later, and it was to go back to London to meet the executive producer, Tony Toe. So it was Stephen, Tom, and Tony were the three execs.
Wow.
And I went and met Tony with Meg again, and I had to do a huge speech this time. And I remember going in, and I'd memorized it, and I knew it was there. But I just went in, and, you know, actors, when you audition, you sometimes sit and you have the papers in your hand. It's good, you know, if you're fluffing or, you know, losing your line, you can look down or whatever. But on this particular day, I decided to sit down. He looked at me, and I just put the sides on the floor, and he said, "Okay, let's go." And so I did this big monologue, and I knew it worked perfect, and that was it. And I got the job.
Ah, that is such a great story, especially that first part that all transpired in one day,
Yeah.
being dwindled down. Now, when you got the role, did you guys know that this was going to be a very limited one season show?
Yes. Yeah, we all knew it was originally, I think, and I can't remember the exact number, but I think originally it was going to be a 12. They were trying to do 12 episodes, or it might have been 8, but they ended up on 10. I don't remember how it happened, but we knew it was, you know, they were pulling from the Ambrose book. We also knew the war ended, you know, so we knew that that would be the show. And that's what we were signed up for. But it took a year. You know, we knew it was roughly a month an episode. It turned out
Wow.
probably a little more. But we also, at the time, it was the most expensive TV show in history. I mean, at the time, I think they were spending about, you know, 12 to 15 million an episode, and that was unheard of.
Wow,
Back,
that is unheard of. And a whole month just to shoot one episode. Now today's they're given maybe 8 to 9 days to spit out one episode.
yeah,
Uh,
and that's mainly network and cable. I mean, I think the big boys can pull that. You know, when that amount of money's going in, they say, okay, we want to get it perfect. There's no date set, so they don't have to hit a schedule.
yeah.
You
Now,
know,
when it came out and it was a huge success, did the success of Band of Brothers surprise even yourself or other members of the cast and crew on how just successful it was and how it was well received by everyone?
I think if you, you know, it's a debated question that's come up before actually, and I think that there are a lot of the guys that say they were completely blown over by, you know, the size of the show. I've always said it didn't shock me in the slightest. I knew from day one that I was getting involved in something epic. Like I knew it. I could just see the talent around it. It was the best of the best that they hired in all departments. You know, from wardrobe to sorry, it's my dog sneezing, to the armorers, to the stunt guys, to, you know, to the background folks, to just the AD department, camera department, directors. I mean, just everybody was just the top of the top at that point. And so I knew very early on that we were into something special. But above that, and this goes for all the guys, we also knew that there was a legacy at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what made the show so good, was Captain Dale Dye, a very famous actor, really, but he's also, you know, a historian and a retired Marine. But he's the guy that puts everyone through boot camp. You know, he's the guy who trains us.
Yeah.
He's a military advisor, and with his help and with our knowledge of this legacy that we wanted to uphold, there was no way we were going to screw it up.
How difficult was the physical preparation for Band of Brothers for you? Was
Well,
it
I,
extensive?
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, this is a joke I've said often. You ask sometimes if we're doing a panel. Sometimes you'll say, "How long was boot camp?" And somebody will say, 3 weeks, and somebody will say it was like 8 days. It's somewhere in the middle. It was about, I think it was about, I don't know, 12 days maybe, which seems like nothing. And so we would absolutely never, ever, ever claim to have done a proper boot camp to anybody that's gone through a boot camp, any of our military guys and gals. However, this is a bunch of actors, and they put us in barracks for that amount of time. We were just in our uniforms the entire time. There was no modern day clothing, no modern day technology. You got a pencil, not even a pen. You got a pencil, piece of paper, a towel that had to be army green, or marine green, I should say. Uh, you had to, sleep with your weapon. You had to learn every drill. And on day one, it was a bunch of guys trying to play soldier and look the part, and we all looked like a bunch of doofuses. And then cut to the end, where we were sharp as tacks, and we could march and cadence, and I could strip my M1 rifle and put it back together in a matter of, not seconds, but a
That's
few minutes.
awesome.
Yeah, we knew how to make maneuvers. We knew how to attack a tank. We knew how to defend the thing. So, yeah, they beat the snot out of us, but in a great way. And look, I was one of the youngest guys, but, we were all, mid-20s, early 30s. And everybody, smoking back then, not being the healthiest. But we were doing, 5-mile runs every morning, PT for 2 hours before chow. So before breakfast, you were going through your paces. You would have your breakfast, which was just a plate of, didn't matter what it was. We were so starved at that point. And, we were just filling up. And then you would do maneuvers until the morning, but then you would have to do book work and, learn how to read maps and compasses and go out and find, old teapots that have been left out in the middle of the woods, with various clues, to sleeping out rough for 3 nights straight, getting used to the cold. They didn't make it easy on us. It wasn't an actors boot camp where we could call our agents and,
And complain about it. But it sounds like it was rough, but at the end of the day, it sounds like it was a very rewarding experience.
it was the greatest thing that they could ever have done for that show. That's what made that show so special, because it bonded the guys, and it bonded us in a way that has never gone away.
Yeah.
There's a core group of us that see each other, talk to each other, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And then there's others that maybe perhaps we don't see that often, but when we do, I mean, me and Scott Grimes talk about this a lot. Scott, who plays Malarkey, we would drink in the same bar in LA, of a summer evening, and we always used to joke because, like, we wouldn't call each other and go, "Hey, I'll be down there," but we sort of knew that at one point one of us would be there, and whoever we were with, we had to apologize because we're like, "It's over. You can hang out with us, but it's me and him now."
It's
And
war stories now.
yeah,
Literally war stories. Before we move on from Band of Brothers, you have been in a lot of successful TV shows. Where does Band of Brothers, what place does it have in your heart?
in my heart, number one. I mean, there's no question. Band was a life changing experience. Just to be a part of something that's so admired and loved, but also respected.
Yeah.
Without doubt. And listen, you're right. I'm so fortunate. I've been involved in some beautiful projects that are great, but I don't think any of those people involved in those projects would take offense to me saying Band. Like, I think
No.
everybody knows it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on. You have an upcoming film. It's your directorial debut
Mm.
called Ire. First question. You also wrote the film, right?
I did, yeah.
What was it like writing and directing for the first time? I love talking to writers and directors because they are the ones who came up with the concept and they got to see it all the way through the filming process. So, what was that whole experience like with Ire for you? And that's the name of the movie that you're making your directorial debut. It's listed as in post production. We'll get to that in a little bit. But explain how it felt. What was it like? Oh, did I lose Ross? Hold on. Let me call him back. Seems like we got disconnected. Apologize, guys. One second. There we go. Hey, we got you back.
Hey, modern technology,
Modern
man.
technology, gotta love it. Don't even worry about it. I'm used to it. So what I was asking is, Ire, which is the movie that you wrote and directed, what was
Yep.
it like making, first of all, your directorial debut and actually writing and seeing a project through the writing phase straight through the filming phase?
Well, I was lucky enough to. I've been writing for many years, and so I guess that honestly started early on with projects where I was acting. I would sort of either ad lib or suggest various things to some of the writers. I even did that on Band. I won't say which scenes, but there was a few scenes that we did in there that were absolutely very kindly. The writers allowed me to have a spin on it. So I've also sold some pilots in the U.S. To Warner's and ABC and a few of the networks. So writing has been something that I've been interested in, that I've had relative success in, even though my TV stuff hasn't been produced yet. But I wrote a film before Ire called About Us, which I just wrote and started. And a dear friend of mine, Stefan Schwartz, who's directed me in multiple things, Crash, White Collar, Luther, he directed it. So I'd already had a hand in writing and getting it produced. So Ire came about because I've had a strange fascination with the prison structure for many years, and I don't know what it is.
Any countries, prison structure in particular?
Yeah, probably the US, but
Okay.
but but the UK in a way too. But I've been like, I'd be shooting a movie in Louisiana, and Angola State Farm was close by, and I was putting together a pitch for a TV show based in a prison. And so I went down and I spent the day with the folks down there and had a look around. And it's not like I'm not being a grief tourist. It's not a kick out of it. I actually find it fascinating that anybody would want to be in a place as chaotic and as harsh and as troublesome as a prison can be.
Yeah.
So I actually think it's a good deterrent for people to know about prison. So that being said, I've always been a fan of prison documentaries, but also prison films. And Shawshank's one of my favorites, and
Mm-hmm.
Pop, the Steve McQueen one is one of my all-time favorites. Cool Hand Luke, the Paul Newman movie. But I've yet to, or for me, I had yet to come across a film that really depicted prison life. And there's been some terrific films. I mean, there's some wonderful films. And I was watching some British films, and they were great. Just wasn't what I was, gearing towards. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I can box myself in a corner and see if I can write this. And my previous script, About Us, is all about love.
Mm-hmm.
It's about love and letting go and forgiveness and all of that. And Ire is the polar opposite. Ire is about, anger and hate and so there was sort of a plan in a weird way of saying, okay, I want to get both these films out, one which is here and one which is here. And originally I was going to play the role in Ire. But the more I started talking to producers, it started looking likely that I could set it up in the UK, and part of the financial package was if I directed it, but also if I was in it. I didn't want to play the lead and direct, but I also knew if I was playing the lead and somebody else directed, I would probably, I'd be biting my tongue a lot because I just had the vision of what this film was. And so we got an incredible cast here in London. The whole film takes place within the prison cell. It takes place over 12 months, but the camera never leaves the cell. So it gives you a feeling that you're incarcerated. Mm-hmm. But I also wanted to make it have a lot of I wanted realistic. But I also didn't want it to become, the prison films that we've all seen and the same angles that we've all seen.
Yeah, cliched.
Yeah. So I wanted to try something different. I wanted to make it look beautiful, when you watch it, because it's already such a darkened thing on the script, and the acting is phenomenal. Like, all the actors are just absolutely incredible. And to me, I was like, as long as we have that story there, I want it to look stunning. I want it to look like an old Coppola film, from the 70s. I want it to have that beautiful gloss, and we did, and we squeezed it in literally after the first wave of COVID. We got all the guidelines in place because it was a contained set. We could contain the crew. We shot it in 3 weeks, but I just had we had the gaffer from Star Wars. We had, our dolly grip was, I went on to do an Apple TV show right after I finished it, and he was the dolly grip on, this huge Apple TV show, and he was doing the dolly on My Little Independent, and so we just had an amazing crew, and I'm really, really proud of it. So it's we're in the final stages of post this week. I've just been doing the last bit of ADR with the actors, and so we should be ready. We've already got distribution, so it'll be out later in the year.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. You said it was it's an independent film. Did you have to go through the film festival circuit to get a distributor?
No, I was very lucky. On About Us, we had a sales company come on very early, and we only went into 2 festivals, and we won in one of them and got competition in the other. But at that point, we'd already sold it. So it was more about creating a buzz with About Us. With Ire, our distribution company were interested in something that I was going to direct and interested in my lead actors, and they came on board script stage. They came on and said, "We are in. Here's where we're at. Here's our release." And that comes with a lovely piece of pressure, but also, and I mean that in a good way, because it's sort of like, they're going to get the film that I give them. And they had to be on board with what my thoughts were, what my vision was, and they were. I mean, they've been brilliant. Occasionally you have to tweak for studios and suits, but you find a middle ground and you make it work.
What did you think being behind the camera directing for the first time? Was it everything you expected it to be?
Yeah, I mean, I dug it. I mean, I've told everybody this. Look, I'm not the actor that's been jonesing to direct at all. I've really haven't had any desire to direct. I enjoy acting. I really do. That's my complete and utter pleasure. So with the directing gig, I was like, okay, all right, I know what I'm doing. I've been around sets for 30 years, so I felt confident in that. I brought in a DP that I've worked with as an actor before. I spoke to him at length and said, look, we're going to be prepared, and we were. It was all about preparation. And, you show up and you run the set appropriately. And, I wanted it to be collaborative, but I also like movies to be fun. I like sets to be fun. We're not curing cancer. I do think entertainment has a lovely value to it. People can switch off their lives and can be enthralled. So, I know we do good. But my days of working on a set that's a nuisance are long gone. I want to have fun, and I want people to have fun. I want people to enjoy themselves and feel safe, and feel respected and feel heard. So it was great because everybody was on that same way.
What genre would you place Ire in? Like criminal? What would you say it would fall
It's
under?
it's a criminal art house film.
Okay.
So so when we say art house, that's not to make everybody go snore or boring. You know, I
No,
mean, it
no.
keeps you going, but it's certainly not a gangster prison film. That's not what I wanted to do.
We're not
So
going to
it's
see anybody getting shivved in the shower or anything.
there's no showers. There is violence in the film, but again, something just from my own catalog. I didn't want to do gratuitous violence, so the violence is there, but it's handled in a way that it still can make you wince. But you're not seeing the usual fare.
Okay.
So yes, there is violence in the film. It's very much a performance driven film, and it's heartbreaking. It's a tough watch, but a really good tough watch.
Okay.
Not putting you through 2 hours of pain. It's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes or just over, I think. But it's a story that really unfolds, and yeah, I would say crime art house. I mean, I guess that would be the genre.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
sounds very interesting. I'll be definitely checking it out. Now, you have another movie that's in post production. This is a movie that you've appeared in called Aftermath. Now,
Correct.
Aftermath, I've been looking through your entire resume, is actually your kind of your first venture into the horror realm. Am I correct?
Sort of. I did. I did a horror movie many years ago. It was me, Tom Hardy, and Scary Spice.
Wow.
You should never watch this film. No, I take that back. It was a thriller. So I did do that horror, and then I did a film called Autopsy with Robert Patrick.
Mm-hmm. The
You
T1000.
Yeah, of course. And you can work out what that movie's about. And so I have dipped my toes into horror, but yeah, horror's just not. I like thriller, and horror just. It's not that I don't like to do it. I guess it just hasn't gravitated towards me. But Aftermath is. I smile because it's one of my best friends. It's his movie. He's the director, Peter Winther, and he called me and said, "He'll kill me for telling you this story." He called me and he said, "Listen, there's this role. It's 3 scenes, but they're big, long, talky scenes. Can I get you out here? It's you and Ashley Green. We need you guys to, we think that you're having this love affair and it's a thing and we got to feel the chemistry and blah, blah, blah." I said, "Great, sure." And it was well written and it was fantastic. We go to LA. We shoot solidly for only a few days, but they were kind enough to put all my stuff together. So we boom, boom, boom. We bang it all out. And then he calls me one night just besides himself. And the only time I've ever been cut from any film is with one of my best friends. Not
Oh,
fully, but like the scenes that we did. He said, "The problem is it looks like she's in love, and it's like, she's got the husband and we got to work." And I'm like, "Don't give me the excuses, buddy. Just, you have to make your time or whatever." So yes, I'm happy to be involved in it, but it's really not my movie.
uh-huh.
Uh, but it's a terrific thriller. It's really scored well. I just like making fun of him, saying, 30 years in the business and I've never ended up on the cutting room floor until I do a film with one of my best friends.
That's why they say never work with friends and family. Uh,
That's
Going back to Ire, some of your castmates from Band of Brothers are in Ire. Is that correct?
that is. I brought in some of the UK boys. Robin Lang, who played Babe Heffron.
Mm-hmm.
Phil Barantini, who played Skinny Sisk. Who else have we got? Who am I missing? I think Bart Rispoli, who played Tipper. So just to tell you who they all are, if you're on Skinny Sisk is if you remember when Liebgart, my character, goes to the mountains to kill the commandant. It's myself, Webster, and Skinny. So that's Phil, who's a wonderful actor, but also a real acclaimed film director right now. He's just done like 2 movies on the bounce, which are doing great. Boiling Point, Stephen Graham, another Band of Brothers guy, and Villain. So he's doing great. And Bart Rispoli played Tipper, who gets his legs blown off, and Liebgart ends up holding him, I think, in episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
So Bart's been a producer for many years. So yeah, the gang got back together. We had lovely visits on set. Dexter Fletcher, who played Johnny Martin, he came down to say hi. Obviously, a big esteemed director himself now. So it was nice to have the boys there. But the truth is, that's what we do. We rely on each other because we know that they can handle it. It's just like, can you come? Yeah, great, done.
That's awesome that in Band of Brothers, you made friends for life. I think that is so fantastic. When going back to Ire for a second and Band of Brothers, the great Steven Spielberg, did you learn anything from working with Steven Spielberg and inspiration just to watch him do what he does?
Well, so Steven was just our exec on Band. He was supposed to direct the first episode. He then got sick. So they pushed that, and then he was going to do the last episode, and for whatever reason, he didn't do the last episode. However, he was very, very prominent in the casting. He was around us all at the beginning, and he would visit set often. Okay. So with Steven comes a persona. It comes, a legendary status.
Oh,
and I've been
around,
and I've been lucky to be around him many times now. So on Band, I used to love it because he would come down and he would always take my M1. And he was always like, hey, lead, we all called each other our character names back then, So, hey, lead guy, look, I want to show you. So when I was, and he would show me how he would shoot, and then he would show me how other actors on Ryan would shoot, and they were goofy, and he was just like a nice, fun guy. And then he was. I ended up going to do my first studio film in America was The Polar Express, a motion capture film with Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yes.
Yeah. And so Tom and I were working very closely together for about a month before they brought in any of the other cast members. And Robert Zemeckis was a director who, Back to the Future and Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah. I actually saw The Polar Express. I took when my kids, this was several years ago now, when my kids are all teenagers now, but when, I forgot which one I took. I have three, sorry. They all sort of blend together after a while. I took one of them, and we saw The Polar Express at the movies, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was. Listen, it's a great little Christmas flick. I mean, it's a little weird. You watch it now; it seems a little waxworky, but at the time, it was miles ahead.
Yeah, it really sort of blended the lines between animation and real life. The way Tom Hanks, his character, it was Tom Hanks.
Well, and we had no idea how it was going. Like Tom and I were just in these goofy wetsuits with dots all over us that were glowing under lights, and we had like a ring of cameras, and we had two studios, one smaller and one massive one. And every week we would say to Bob, to Zemeckis, how's it going? And Bob was like, I don't know, it's upstairs with the geniuses, I have no idea. But it was a magical experience. But that brings me to Steven again, because he came and visited set one day. And I remember, I've mentioned this story before. I remember standing there, he'd come in, and every time I've seen him, he actually salutes and calls me soldier, which I think is either super sweet or he just forgets my name each time. And we hug and we say hi, and he's always super sweet and super kind. And so he came down on set, and he was laughing, at me and Tom in these goofy wetsuits, But there's myself, there's Tom, there's Mr. Zemeckis, and there's Steven. And I don't even remember what we were talking about. But it was very chilled and relaxed, and it was all very cool, very cool. And the AD then called me and said, Ross, we need to get you, you had to get your dots fixed every, 20 minutes back then. I'm sure it's different now. And so I had to go in and get them re-glued. And as I was walking away, I was like, all right, guys, I said, Steven, nice to see you. Bye. And I'll see you guys after lunch, And as I'm walking away, I had a moment where I just stopped on my own and went, that's a crazy group to be standing with.
I know. I mean,
I'm a kid from Scotland, and I'm in, Cobra Studios where they did Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
I'm there with one of my favorite directors of my favorite movie, Forrest Gump. I'm there with the guy who introduced me to cinema, Steven Spielberg. And I'm there with Tom, who, I can say is a friend.
Isn't life just like, man, wow. You never know.
Yeah, really wonderful. It was.
It is wonderful. Let's talk about another very successful show that you've been on, White Collar.
Hmm.
Did you enjoy your role as Keller on White Collar?
When you asked me earlier, what was my favorite job, and I immediately went to bed.
Hmm.
Uh, that would be true. White collar is a very close second, third.
Okay.
I had such a wonderful time because many reasons. One, they just wrote me hell of a character.
Hmm.
They wrote this guy. We didn't know if it was going to go beyond a guest star, which is usually just one episode. We had
Hmm.
no idea. And it just grew and grew and grew, and the fan base just really gravitated towards him. They really liked him, so they would just write me great stuff. And I did, like, I don't know, 8, 9 episodes over a few years. I mean,
Yeah.
but I would pop every now and again, and Keller was the golden egg. Whenever they wanted to, heighten the stakes, they would bring Keller back, and so it was. I knew every script that came in was going to be just a crazy great time for me. And of course, there I am in New York City. We're filming outside the Empire State Building. They're closing down traffic so that we can get our scene. In the middle of a scene, I'll be doing a walk and talk on the phone, and some random passerby would stop me in the middle of a take and go, "Hey, my wife loves you, man." And it's like, we're rolling, but welcome to New York.
Yeah,
But I
exactly. You know?
loved that whole energy of the city, and so yeah, I had a magical time on White Collar, and the cast were terrific, and we had a beautiful time. And in fact, there's probably 3 or 4 particular jobs that people know me from, either from my voice or my face. Like, I'll get recognized from, if they just don't know that sometimes it's just, hey, you're that guy. But Keller is a big fan favorite. you
Yeah,
know
yes, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. Is there any particular episode or memorable scene in White Collar that you really enjoy more than the others from White Collar?
I've got to say, all of them, like each episode, like I said, I just had magical times, and it was funny. I was just back in New York last month for about 5 weeks, shooting another show, and on my downtime, uh, my hotel was literally a block away from one of my best friends, Frank John Hughes, who played Garnier of Band of Brothers.
Hmm.
And so Frank being Frank and me being me, every day it was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" So we were hanging out as much as I could, and I had a decent amount of time off, so we could hang all day. And part of our hangout day together was walking around the city, and he would show me all the old mobster hangouts in Little Italy, and I would show him various parts that I knew and about John Lennon, and we would tour guide each other. But we would end up going down into parts of the city, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, this is where I shot. This is where, this is the Keller death scene." Like, I just walked by
Yeah.
where I did the running out with the bags and get shot. And then Water Street, which was the first episode I was in. But that's now all covered down by the boat, but I
Yeah.
knew it was there because of the boat in the background. Um, the Beekman Hotel, which
Hmm.
was another episode, I think season 3, which was derelict at that point. And so I went back into the Beekman now, which is like a 5-star hotel in
Oh
New York
yeah.
City. It's done up and it's beautiful, but you go in and it's still all those, and I was like, wow, I was running around getting shot.
Yeah, that south of Houston, that part of downtown Manhattan has been completely Alphabet City. It's been completely redone. Now, Keller's death on White Collar was abrupt. Did you anticipate that? Were you expecting the character to survive the show? How did you react when you read that script?
Well, we knew it was the end of the series. So it was
Yeah,
the last episode of the series. So
yeah.
we knew the series was done. So the only way that Keller would ever come back is if they ever made a movie, right? And we talked about it. And I remember Julian was our writer at the time, and Jules had been on that last season, and I've been hanging with him a lot. And he was like, "Listen, you know, we want to go out with a bang. How'd you feel about it?" And I said, "I feel great about it. Why not?"
Yeah.
My only thing was, as I said, let's not do the movie star death. I want it to be ugly, and I want it to be literally like the strings being cut.
Yeah.
You're a puppet who falls, and so that's what we do. If you watch it, they slow motioned it because it's TV, but When I fall down very goofy. My legs are all crooked. It's all, but no, it's a nice way to say goodbye to that little mischievous fellow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I loved it. I loved the way it ended, and it was so abrupt, and I think it was very nicely done. I wanted to ask you. You have done several shows where you've appeared on one episode, like Lucifer, Castle, and several others. What's it like as an actor to go into a set with an established cast that's it's like Castle, it's a very
Mhm.
successful show, and just to be there for one day? How does the rest of the crew receive? Is there a name that you guys give the actor that comes in to do just one
Yeah.
role in one episode? What's that name?
Well, it's called a guest star. So guest star is literally, but usually it's very rarely a day. Usually you're there for the whole episode. So
Yeah,
you're usually in, 7 or 8 days of that 8-day shoot. And usually the guest star, and I know this even just from being a series regular, the guest stars almost get a better role in the episode
oh yeah,
because like they sort of write in, it's interesting, there's a lot of stuff, it's like this cool thing. And I think most actors on a show, when a guest star comes in, if they're on their toes, if they know what they're doing, it ups everybody's game. So for me, when I've been a series regular and a guest star's come in, I love it because I'm like, great, somebody's coming to play ball, and all of a sudden you're in it again and you get the juices flowing. Because when you're on a show for a long time, it's not that
hmm
it becomes monotonous, but there's certainly times you've got to, really gear yourself up to deliver, um, which you do because, we're all professionals. But being a guest star, yeah, it's fun. You sort of go in, the show's not on your shoulders. So you're already on the juggernaut. The crew tend to like it. You more often than not know people on that crew.
yeah.
And so you're hanging out with buddies you haven't seen for a while. You have fun, and as long as you're doing your homework and you are doing your job, you have a fantastic time. I love it. I love guest time.
No, no. Like I said yesterday, I had a whole library to choose from, and I'm like, I want to watch that episode of Castle again. Now,
Oh,
you've done a lot of TV. You've done film. Any particular one or the other you prefer, whether it's television or film?
no, not really. I think don't know why my voice went high there. No, not really. Sounded like my father. Uh, no, I mean, look, I think TV, the hustle is on quick. You got to get to it. Movies, you tend to have, unless you're doing like a low budget independent, you tend to have a little more time. But still, you got to hustle. My first love is film. If I'm going to sit, and the times have changed. I mean, there's TV shows now that are just cinematic quality.
Oh yeah,
But for me, I mean, I love going to the movie theater. I love sitting down and watching a movie.
yeah.
Uh, there are TV shows that, of course, I watch that I'm a huge fan of. But, um, if you were to put a gun to my head and say, who are you working with? Are you going to go and, do this juggernaut TV show, or are you going to go work with, Spielberg,
Yeah,
Zemeckis, Scorsese?
Spielberg.
You
It's a
know,
no-brainer.
yeah,
To
yeah.
date, would you say Band of Brothers has been the biggest budget project you've been on?
I'd say Band. Funny enough, Polar Express was a huge
Yeah,
budget.
that was going to be my second guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, TV show wise, yeah. Like even other, when I was doing Crash for what did we do, like 26 episodes?
Yeah.
It was probably you know under 5 million an episode for sure. So it was still high end TV, but
Oh yeah.
it's no the 12, 15 that you're getting for band.
So, what are your feel? We're almost out of time, but what are your feelings? Like you just mentioned, your love of going to the movie theater. I feel the same way. COVID over the last 18 months has seriously impacted that. Studios, distributors have been trying different, you can tell they're trying different methods to see what's going to work moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take some time for it to hopefully go back to the way it was, where people do feel comfortable going to a movie theater and sitting right next to a stranger. Uh, what are your thoughts on that? Are you afraid of the future of the cinema, of the theater itself?
I'm not. I mean, I think, everybody needs to take a personal responsibility. I was in Italy when COVID first started, so I was in like the heartbeat.
That was
I know
bad.
New York took like the second string of hammering,
Yeah.
uh, and I feel that, it's personal responsibility. Look, I'm still smart. If I'm traveling, I'm tested all the time. If I'm working, I'm tested all the time. I've sat on many a airplane, and it's uncomfortable and it's annoying having a mask on, but you do it. I mean, I'm hoping that this will eventually pass, but to be honest, even without COVID, the movie theaters were starting to struggle in a sense of, the streaming, the everybody wants to stay at home. It's easier. Do you really want to, walk and
COVID just sped it up.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was,
So
I agree
my
with
hope
you.
is
Yeah.
people just remember what the magic of the cinema is, and to
Hmm.
me, there's nothing like that. So, I've joked about it. The movies that I would go and see 2, 3 years ago, I was probably one of five people in a Tom Cruise movie anyway,
Hmm.
unless it was open night. You know what I mean? It's like I was in an empty theater most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm an actor, so in between jobs, I've got days off. I can go in and in the matinee, and it's empty anyway.
Yeah.
But for me, yeah, I just hope people remember that magic of the lights going down, the music coming up,
The
you know,
previews. I love the previews.
love previews, huge fan. I hated it when they started doing like the commercials before the previews, so
Yeah.
like, I could do without that, but I love getting the previews, that's
Hmm.
the deal.
That's awesome. Ross, this has been a fascinating hour. It just flew by. You're an
Really
amazing person.
pleasure.
It's been
Thank you.
it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the audience
I,
before we say
I just
goodbye?
thank you so much, and thank you to Marco as well, who I know had a big
Yes.
hand in setting this
Yes.
up.
Yes.
Uh,
Marco is our executive producer and my brother.
and your brother, I heard all about you when I was in New York.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
I'm excited what you guys are doing, and thank you for having me, pal. It was a pleasure.
absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Until tomorrow, stay safe and always stay walking. Bye bye.